Fair dinkum. Reckon we should crack on with this yarn?
Too right. Bonza idea. Let's chuck a Yui on the waffle.
Do something bad to us, we are going to do things to you that have never been done before.
We the people tell the government what to do. It doesn't tell us. We the people are the driver. The government is the car. And we decide where it should go and by what route to do. We the people are free. And I hope we have once again reminded people that man is not free unless government is limited.
Well, happy good morning to you, folks, and I trust it is a good morning to you. If you've been following the gold and silver markets over the last few days, you've probably had smiles or in maybe some cases a bit of a frown. If you were watching the prices yesterday, they ballooned up to nearly $125 an ounce for silver in Australia yesterday, and then dropped rather significantly back down to about 113, and right now trading at about 108. That is expected. It's called the dip. And if you have a few spare dollars, folks, I'd go and maybe invest a little bit of silver in there if I were you. Now, the other night, we were very lucky to get Juan O Savin join us. Unfortunately, Beckio, who joined us then, can't join us this morning. She's got a prior commitment she has to be at. But Juan's connection last time was a bit shaky. This time round, we've got him back and he has a stronger connection and he's definitely keen to come and answer some of your questions. We've got a lot of them to get through. And if you do have more questions, then please throw them in the chat and we will throw them up when we can appropriately. So let's get to it. Welcome the man to back to the stage. Thank you for joining us again, Juan O Savin, this time from, a slightly quieter part of the hotel.
Yeah. That's too bad we missed out a great sunset a few hours ago. It was spectacular. And one of those rare sunsets where it just illuminates the clouds in such a spectacular way that I would have loved to have shared it with everybody. It was fantastic. So
you do a lot of traveling around the world. Do you, you obviously enjoy sunsets a bit. You see a few of them. Do you notice differences in the different countries, the different types of sunsets you see?
Well, I will say this, that the one tonight had a certain rarity to it. The way the clouds set, it reminded me of actually being at Caesar's Hotel in Las Vegas, and the way the clouds are. They do this rotating thing every hour where it looks like it's daylight and then, sunset and starlight and all that. It's very fun, and this was much like that. With the scenery around and theaters and like that, it was just one of those amazing moments. So I had to stop and look at it. It reminded me of so many of them that I've had on my boat in spectacular places, and missed that very much.
Well, yes, I believe sunsets from boats are probably the best place to view sunsets, aren't they?
Yeah, something about being on the water. And
yeah.
Yeah, I'll get back to it eventually, but I haven't had a chance for several years. We're right.
Well, you've got to be off, like so many of us, we've got to go off and save the world before we can go fishing.
Mm-hmm.
I just thank you again for getting back to us so quickly and wanting to get back to some of the viewers' questions here. And I'll get into the first one, if I may. It reflects back to what happened in Sydney just prior to Christmas and the attack in Sydney on the Jewish community. There is a lot of speculation here in Australia that there is some similarities between that attack and the attack that happened in Port Arthur in 1996 that was used to denude Australia of its civilian weaponry. And of course, all governments in Australia have moved to put more restrictions on weapons for Australians when there wasn't an Australian involved in any of these shootings. What are your thoughts on it?
Even Putin warned America not to let go of your rights to have firearms. And I think in looking at some of the stuff I've seen on that event and the prior one, that, you know, being courteous, you'd say there's some mystery there. Something's not quite right. I think that's probably being too generous. We are being manipulated. The mechanisms used are very real. There are certain branches of government that are not accountable to the people and are being used to conduct false flags. Here in America, it's SES. Within the British Commonwealth, you have one that parallels it.
Right.
It's very, very, very real, and it's very disconcerting. I believe that we will help you in exposing the one on the U.S. side, and that will have clear threads into the British Commonwealth system, and will give you an opportunity to try to dismantle that there. It will not be a simple thing. It is the belief within those agencies of government that they have the legal right, authority to control the way the people think as a matter of national security. And they that includes using false flags to control how the public moves and acts and does its next thing as a matter of continuity in government. It is an attack on the sovereignty of the people, and cannot be allowed to stand. That's why here in America, we start with our Constitution has freedom of speech first, and then the very second thing, the right to have and hold and bear arms. And that is under attack by those that would take control of the government against the will of the people, against the best interests of the individuals, and re-enslave us as though the government that takes control is somehow still of the people, by the people, for the people, and that becomes an illusion. And so the fight for humanity includes that we do not sell our souls, do not let it be taken through these series of false flags. And I've seen some of the data related to what occurred here, and I think it bears numerous clear markers of some kind of a staged event that is not what has been sold as being in the mainstream press.
Yeah. All right. You mentioned, well, in passing and glancing, I'm going to draw a thin line here to Pam Bondi. One of the questions we have here is, can Pam Bondi be trusted, considering that she was part of Mike Pence's state administration? And I think that a further extension of that question is, we are seeing arrests, but we're also seeing people get let off. And then there's Tina Peters, who I want to get to shortly.
Well, not the arrests that we're really looking for, and not in the context that, I had something that came up about almost 2 months ago now. And in the course of the discussion with persons in the White House, the response was, you might see some activity over at Justice Department. Do not expect the resolution of this matter to originate in the Justice Department. The activity to address and resolve this particular issue will come from elsewhere. And the Justice Department is, at this point, as far as I'm concerned, almost completely dysfunctional. Have several very close friends who got positions in the Justice Department early on in this current administration. and they're just, they're so frustrated. They're staying. I had a couple of them that thought, just like Bongino, maybe they needed to exit and would have more power on the outside, but I don't think that's the proper move. They're going to hold tight. There's some adjustment coming. And Pam Bondi, one of the things people have to bear in mind, Trump came into office. He had to get certain positions filled with a Congress that, a Senate that wasn't, that was adversarial to begin with. And so Pam Bondi was someone they could get through the Senate so they could get on to the business. And there's a number of people that were discussed, but you couldn't get them past the Senate. They'd have been great, directors of the Justice Department and other agencies. And remember, Trump had the slowest rate of Senate approvals of appointees ever in history of in the beginning of this term. So there was a lot of drama that just dragged on and on. The opposition's unbelievable. Now, I said literally from day one with Pam Bondi that I believe she was transitional and that there would be a change at some point in time. And I think we're there. Her alliances with Bush people and by extension Rockefeller people is not favorable to the administration. And she's actually spent much of her time, maybe the majority of her time while she was in office, at her home in Florida and administrating from Florida, with all these critical things. Others have been really running the operation. And, the whole fight with Todd Blanche and others there, this is not going to solve the problems that we have, which are world class. We have to stand the attack. I think there'll be a change here shortly. Pam could hold the office and continue to hold it if suddenly she, dove into several matters that have to be dealt with. But, Trump has sent some fairly aggressive messages over to her in the last few weeks and repeatedly. Where's the arrest? When's this going to happen on several pretty, simple cases? We have some monsters that just, this will not pass, or Trump's administration will be a failure, and he can't afford that, and he won't do that. So,
yeah. Well, interesting question here from Peg's Place. Wants to know if America is going to get rid of maritime law. I'm not sure that you're completely under maritime.
We won't get rid of maritime law. It's an interesting question, but the reality is that it actually, when it's engaged properly, is a very useful, sound tool. We can't have it superseding our Constitution, and so there's places where it can and should apply, and there's other places where it's a reference, but it shouldn't run America. And we need it for certain things, including, by the way, things related to space and our reaching into space with colonies and things like that, which will happen very quickly, sooner than most people have even imagined. I expect our first permanent outposts, and the space stations really aren't them, our first permanent outposts within the next 20 years. It could be even sooner. There's technology that allows us to park stuff in near Earth orbit fairly cheaply. And so as we get to where we decide to deploy that stuff and groups begin to do that, one of the things about maritime law also is going to allow that they can be autonomous with their own countries, and there's
Yeah.
certain rules that apply, but it's a very interesting conversation. We need that. It's not that far. It's within the lifetime of most of the people probably in this audience. So it will become a bigger issue sooner than you think.
One, there was a fellow, I think he was a Canadian, called Bruce Sees All, had a very large telescope and trained it on the moon a great deal, and recorded everything that it saw. And it recorded many strange things happening on the surface and coming off the surface of the moon. There are more of those videos starting to appear recently. I've noticed just before Christmas, somebody new with a new telescope showing things that appear to be floating across the moon. We're hearing stories of moon bases. I would have thought they're a bit further out than a ISS or whatever. So, what can you tell us about moon bases?
Boy, I wish I could go deeper into that. I have to kind of
Be
pace
careful.
myself on that. And I will say this, go watch the movie Forbidden Planet, and then realize that it's a lot closer than you ever dreamed.
Forbidden Planet. All right, it's on the must-watch. Go on.
And one of the interesting things about that movie, by the way, it's kind of a question: what did you know, and when did you know it? It had stars from several studios, all given over to do this movie at a time when studios did not cooperate and allow their stars to work for other studios. That just was verboten. They spent a lot of money and time developing stars. That particular movie needed to get a message imprinted in the youth of that generation to get them to think differently. I will tell you that one of the interesting things about Howard Hughes, he believed that we were living in a junkyard from a time earlier in human history where, if not humans, specifically descendants of Adam, humanoids, our cousins, if you will, populated this solar system, and that something had happened and that they had destroyed themselves. And so we're rebuilding where others have gone before. And the technology was not as far ahead of us as one might think. He believed that the tech was perhaps even only hundreds or 1,000, maybe 2,000 years ahead of where we are right now. Think of what we have today. Imagine my grandfather, who was in a horse-drawn fire engine crew, and in his lifetime saw it go all the way to rockets, crossing our solar system, technology that was almost, beyond belief. And it happened so fast. I think just add, 20 years to any kind of technology you're thinking about right now. Add 50 years, add 100 years. Think of nanobots, micro machines building things. It sounds so crazy. I was having a conversation with somebody the other day, and I remember when the first Xerox copy machines came out and were being advertised. It was such an amazing thing.
Yeah,
The first
color television, mobile phone.
Yeah, color television versus black and white and all the other things. So, but let me just mention this. So within the Xerox, you think of just a printed copy that's sent across, a teletype type system. We're printing a copy, more and more and more advanced. I mean, the copy machines now have to have certain features in them, so you're not printing money, very high quality money. People don't know that, but there's been features in there for 30 years to protect them against counterfeiting. And so you go out and try to pass paper counterfeits. They know exactly the serial number of the copy machine it came from.
Oh, wow.
And those are features in the software that have been there for a very long time. So, but think of a printer that now we have 3D printers, and they make amazing things. But a project that I had somebody that was on 30 years ago was to print exact copies of certain types of other machinery with available materials, not just celluloid, but actual materials. So if you put, say, a something on the table, like in their case, they were doing it for testing with a 45, because a 45 has lots of things in it, and they include a bullet in there. And they were trying to get a machine to just take metallic goo, silicon, and other materials and be able to print that exactly. They never got close. They got interesting stuff, but it's only a matter of time till, say, you can take a 57 Chevy and have something duplicated, and maybe the early copies are, poor. Maybe the materials aren't exactly the metal that was in the thing, the chrome that was there, the rubber that was on the tires. But at some rudimentary level, they can print. Well, but it's like with the copies we have today, the quality of the copies is unbelievable, and the 3D prints is unbelievable. What breakthroughs in technology would allow you maybe to do something much more astonishing, say 50 years or 500 years from now? You think, oh, that's impossible. That's about 500 years from now. What would be possible? And when you have machines that are nanobots that can do very intricate stuff. I mean, I think of a microchip. When we first started with the computers, they didn't have microchips. We began transistorizing the technology, and then going to wafers and shortening the distance that the signal had to go at speed of light. The chips were too big to work efficiently, so we had to make them smaller and smaller and smaller. So at the speed of light, there was less distance to travel for the information between the various layers to record more quickly and more quickly and more quickly. And so we have, the machines today, one of the things about the movie Forbidden Planet, what were the beings recording in these massive computer complexes that they had built, 20 miles deep, hundreds of miles across? They were putting their consciousness into the machines. And that's a common theme. I have a very extensive collection of sci-fi materials. And so I love all the old stories like that. Once in a while I'll pull out. I had occasion a couple of weeks ago to have 3-4 hours in my library that I hadn't had in a long time. And I just went and picked one of my publications out from the 1947.
Wow.
And I just opened it to one of the sci-fi stories that was in one of these little tabloid magazines that go out, every month to people.
Yeah.
And it was a story about a submarine where the crew on it had figured out how to make it so it could be used for transit to space, and that there was a rocket that was being used for a intersolar, in the solar system trip that had a failure. And these guys, using this converted submarine from World War II, had figured out how to travel, and they go and rescue this rocket crew with what at first looked to be an inferior technology, but in reality they just added a little bit of a feature to it that allowed it to work perfectly for space travel, and that they could defy gravity very easily. Once they understood the trick, it was simple. And it'd be like, today I put, I have one of my vehicles, they're putting a modern engine transmission in it that is, 900 horsepower or whatever. And this is a car, a very unusual car from the 30s. They've got all sorts of things to stiffen and protect and add and like that. But to all the world, you look at it and it's a repurposed 30s car. They could never have dreamed of what I could add to that car today, back at that time. And so you think about it again, I come back to the printing. If you can duplicate something in the way you print it, and you just have a big vat of goo, and it just gets material that can be turned into chrome for the bumper, rubber for the tires, intricate detail, the valve stems for letting the air in and out, all of the components in the engine. You say, well, that's crazy. Well, if I showed you in the 50s or 60s a 3D printer from today that can make a celluloid gun printed out literally in a couple of minutes, that'll fire, a bullet, you'd be absolutely astonished.
It would be magic.
And so the reason I say that is that also the ability to download your consciousness into a machine and to store it. How crazy was Howard Hughes to think in those terms? Remember, it was Hughes Space Systems that sent over 30 drones, unmanned spacecraft, to the moon before the Apollo landings, and documented and photographed the early ones impacted, later ones landed on the moon and sent back information from all different regions of the moon so they could plan where they wanted to do their landing. And so whatever you think of the actual moon landing, which is somebody's falsehood related to what we were doing in the Soviet Union at the time, the reality is those landers did go, and they sent back real information. And Hughes was of the opinion that we were looking at a whole junkyard across our solar system to be mined. Even with this Atlas III thing coming in right now, there's actually a pretty strong case to be made that that's some type of space debris from a prior civilization hundreds of thousands of years ago, that you're seeing parts and bits and pieces that come back on regular orbits, technology, if you will, very highly decayed, but technology nonetheless. And just to finish that portion of the conversation, it's very clear that Mars, the fourth planet, is was almost certainly a moon of a much larger planet. And that larger planet, which it was a moon of, is that debris we see, which is the asteroid belt. The asteroid belt is made up of bits and parts and pieces of an exploded planet, much larger than the Earth. And that the Mars being a moon of it, how do we know that it was a moon of that destroyed planet? Because when you look at Mars, one side of the planet is completely cratered, like somebody took a shotgun and blasted it right there, blew it right in the face. On the back side of the planet, you have this super deep tear, 40,000 feet deep, Valley Marineris. And that trench that goes across the backside, when the pressure hit the planet from this exploding planet that it was a moon of, the cratering is not like it got hit over thousands of years or millions of years by meteorites or something like that. It's only on one side. It would have been peppered all the way around. Otherwise, it looks like it was hit, and all of the debris hit it within a very short space of probably less than about 4 hours. And so on one side it's pristine, the other side is just completely pockmarked and blown to smithereens. Somebody asked a question before we got interrupted the other day. The materials under the Great Pyramid, there's a platform there that appears to be at least 250,000 years old underneath the Great Pyramid. The erosion on the Sphinx appears to be at least 80,000 years old. That's outside of our, parameters for descendants of Adam, if you will. And that there was some prior humanoid civilization, the definition of human being descendants of Adam, and we have a pretty good understanding of how far back Adam was. So was there something here before? And I think across this planet, we see all sorts of evidence that is much older than, say, the 6,000 years. So what prior civilization existed here, and did that, or parts of it go back further? And I'll add one last little detail. The highest altitude heritage site on planet Earth for the UN and heritage sites that things we want to preserve is at Mount Hermon, on the border between Israel and Syria. And at Mount Hermon, the legend is, the tale, that is where 200 landed, and they were godlike humanoid beings, extremely intelligent. And at the base, at the top of the hill, there's a religious location about 5,600 feet or something. At the bottom was the city of Baal, and had archways all around to come and go from the city. And that was a city that was known where child sacrifice was practiced. And in order to get favor, in order to get protection, the humans, if you will, went to these advanced creatures who had this city and offered their children, who were sacrificed in order to get favor, good, etc. A very serious, horrible thing. In fact, one of the archways was printed, made a copy of, and then it was blown up by ISIS, but it was made a copy of, a very exacting copy, by this World Heritage Foundation Society, 25 years ago. And that copy was an archway that's gone around the world. Hillary Clinton wanted to speak in that duplicate archway in the park there in New York, where they were going to park it, just weeks before the 2016 election. And that's an archway of the city of Baal, and people went crazy. I was one of them, that she was going to speak in an archway where the city that you are allowed entrance to practice child sacrifice. These are not, hidden mysteries. These are things that are very real in our society today. And so the question is, how real was it? Was it just a legend? No, it's a very real thing. Just 1 second. So.
All right. One's
I
got
wanted the light on. So,
cool.
but the reason I say that is that it shapes much of what our world is all about. We have all sorts of hidden features that some of the practicing politicians, families, etc., the royal families believe that they're descendants of the Cain, and that Cain came from the sexual relationship between Lucifer, Satan, the devil, the green man, whatever goes by 1,000 names, in the Garden of Eden, that Cain was a hybrid. And so those royal families believe that they are hybrids, and they laugh about it, that they're serpent, like they're reptilians, because they're hybrids. They're more than human. And so they have the right to rule because they're more than just mere humans. That Cain was a hybrid and Abel was merely human. And so the Bible doesn't show Cain as a descendant of Adam. It shows only Abel and then Seth, and doesn't note Cain. And so, there's some point to that. So you look out at the world around you, even things like wanting you not to have a gun. Is this a control thing by people, whether you believe that what I just told you is true or not, whether the devil, a space alien, somebody alien to creation with Adam, came in, interbreeded, and their walk amongst us. Even if you don't believe that, there's a faction of our society in very powerful positions who do believe it, and then belief is the driver of action because they believe a certain way. They believe that they can and do and should operate a certain way. And so if you don't know that, you might be fighting with one hand tied behind your back because you think everybody's the same. And there's a component of the people in senior positions around the world who seek those positions, even in the context of families, if you will, that are driven differently than you are. And they become a threat to you because they see you as in the way of what they want to do. When Hughes was looking at these things across the planet, he believed that was a big component in what was causing a lot of problems on the planet, including the wars and like that. And I don't really ever talk about it, but something that he felt was his most valued possession, he conveyed to me while he was still alive. And so I look at so much of what I see in the world in that context, that it's not what it appears to be. And one of the great places to start in understanding all of that is the moon.
All right. Interesting. That is very interesting. People might want to go back and have a listen to what you just said again and have a real good think about it. Look, you've raised so many questions there, and I'm sorry I did. That moon question was one of mine, and I didn't realize that it would take me down this rabbit hole, which I'm a bit excited to. And if I go down that, I won't ask these people's questions. So I'll go back to the folks' questions. Can you enlighten us if it is true, or was there a rumor Australia was in the process of being adopted? If so, by the lawful Republic of the USA or the deep state? any truth to any of it?
Well, I think there was some interesting discussions, but I'm not. We're nowhere close to doing something there right now yet. I will say this: that before this realignment that's happening across the globe is completed over the next decade or so, I believe that we will find that the U.S., New Zealand, Canada, Australia, Greenland are realigned in a very different way than we are right now. And that's a natural realignment. The peoples have very similar ways of thinking, governing principles, etc., the populations. And the pressure on Australia from within the Commonwealth is absolutely over the top. Same thing in Canada, New Zealand. Greenland, for different reasons, is being choked back from where it should actually be. They will want to, and the people will find a way to realign with where America's going in the world. And it's an important thing. It's hard to visualize exactly how this is going to play out, but I've seen some of the, forward idea, thinking, planning towards what that would look like. We don't probably actually want Canada, for example, as a 51st state. The Canadian people don't really want that. We don't probably really want that. It becomes too cumbersome. That doesn't mean that we don't come up with a realignment where we're shouldering up together so precisely, so intricately, that our populations drop a lot of the normal interstate borders, connections, etc., technology for ID and things like that would allow us to have a much more transparent border than we have right now.
We're actually hearing that happening with Australia, between Australia and New Zealand, that won't be too much longer. We won't need a passport to travel there, that we're basically all cousins anyway, and New Zealand used to be part of this big part of the world anyway.
Well, there's, this idea that you divide and then conquer, and that you need to keep populations some level of friction but the reality is we need the trade. We need the ability to move more freely. Our populations already transit very readily. We're very much like-minded within these four countries. And therefore, even other territories of the U.S. do not mesh as well, let alone the security interests and the business interests, as it does between the U.S., Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and Greenland. And so it's a natural evolution. We already have, we have some of our most secret bases on planet Earth right there in Australia.
Yeah.
And from an economic standpoint, Australia really needs the U.S. within its operations. The way that Australia is being treated within the Commonwealth is absolutely, it's, atrocious. You're like a slave state. I don't know if Australians see it that way or not, but that's the way it looks from our business relationships and from the outside. When you look at labor costs and things like that, the legal stuff, oh my gosh, what Australians deal with is just so over the top.
Well, we do hope that it is waking more and more of us up every day with the atrocities that are being committed against us. A great question here regarding the realignment. What's going to happen? America, like ourselves, has a bit of an immigration problem at the moment. What's going to happen to all those immigrants with this realignment that comes from MKD girl?
Well, again, you have people in power who are trying to impose on the Australian people things that do not actually make sense. They're diluting your culture, your values, your ways of operation by placing this immigrant population there, this replacement population. That part of the thing that is unique about Australia is the personality of the people for self-governance of and that is not something that these globalista like or want. In their estimation, go back to the Georgia Guidestones that we had here in the U.S., this idea that the carrying capacity of planet Earth was only 500 million people, 500 million. And therefore, 13 out of 14 people alive on the planet needed to be eliminated by one means or another. That the planet only needs 500 million people. And who would those people be? Well, within the Georgia Guidestones, it's essentially telling you it's an elite. You have within the royal families, these royalists around the world, a belief that that they have the right to rule by blood, and that everybody else is there for their benefit. And they act like they're taking care of you, and they come to a function and wave the hand over you and let you entertain them and clean everything up for them. It's not they're not serving the people as much as might be thought by some people. And the reality is, from an American standpoint, we're our own sovereigns, every one of us, every man king within his own home, within his own possessions. And we don't curtsy or bow to any other man just because of their birth lineage. And so we don't work well. Somebody, there's groups that want us to realign back into the Commonwealth countries that were a rogue state. Well, our personality is there's no way that we're going to allow people to rule us just because of how they're born. And in fact, even the Dominion vote system, the choice of the term, the word, is to capture control of our voting system to put people into power who are not the choice of the people, but have an illusion that they're there by the will of the people. And it's actually a fraudulent voting system. What you're about to see in America for the next several years is the greatest upheaval ever within leadership, rooting out all of those people that were put into power through vote fraud and machine voting system fraud, all the different ways that could have happened, and trials, including tribunals at Gitmo and other locations. We're going to show the world how this can be done. And then the people that were doing it, led in many ways by people that hold government positions currently, especially within the intelligence community. We're going to root them out viciously. We are going to rip them out of power in so many different places, so many different ways. And the people that we have in protective custody here in the U.S. right now, their affidavits, their statements, their documentation, their records that they've kept show that they flipped the vote in 71 countries plus the United States, over half the population of the world.
It's
is
amazing.
now living under government dictate and rule of people who were not the will of the people, who were there through fraud, counterfeit votes, more powerful than counterfeit money. Once we get America back on track, as we're doing that, we're then going to expose this across the world with the material we have and help the people. We don't want to be our brother's keeper. We don't want to come in and rule someplace else. We will be our brother's brother, and we will help those populations that want to throw off this tyranny to take control of their own governance. And it's not an instant thing. There's a culture that you have to develop, a mindset that's been being artfully, methodically destroyed across the world. We will do what we can to help to rebuild that. And you have people, you have a number of them in Australia who understand the problem pretty doggone well and will be more than glad to shoulder up, take on the yoke, and try to work through to get governance in Australia back to the people. And then it's a natural alignment with the United States that will come out of that. And I think, especially because they want to throw off the tyranny of these frauds that have taken control of the country and continue to try to capture control of the country through these false flags, which you just saw another example of.
Yeah, sadly. So Tina Peters would feature heavily, I would think, in any kind of prosecution going forward. And you're mentioning that, you're going to ruthlessly tear the wrongdoers out. I imagine you'll start in Colorado there. And how does a state ignore a president's pardon order?
Well, one of the things that I think people need to understand, this is a seditious act. When you defy the presidential order in this way, then you're saying that the state can operate autonomously where it wants to, at the will and whim of a governor. And ultimately, that leads to fractionalization. It is a type of civil war against a central government. And America is unique because while we do have states' rights, and it was critical to forming together as a country, we also have certain things that are accepted legally in the legal community as the way that we keep the union together and work together. And so what has been done by the governor of Colorado is to cross a line. There's no case in the history of the United States where a presidential pardon has ever been overturned. None.
Yeah.
There's no states have rights, but in order to have a union, we have certain things that are there as safeties against a state that goes rogue somehow, goes too far afield from where we have to be in order to maintain the union. And the union is key, as we know back to Lincoln. There has to be certain things that we walk in step together on. Otherwise, you don't have a union. And so Trump will not allow that seditious behavior on the part of the Colorado governor to stand. And the Colorado governor said that a court will have to tell him to let Tina Peters go. Well, that also defies certain authorities that we give to the president within certain parameters. The pardon power is like a safety against rogue action within the states that that exceeds some norm. And so to defy that and say that a court is more powerful than the President of the United States, we certainly do a bit of bouncing back and forth. We have a strong Supreme Court system. There's all sorts of things in there. There is no historical precedence, even though some people say there is. When you actually look at the law, what's going on? No, it's completely without merit what the governor of Colorado has done. So what President Trump will do, and it won't be that far along, in order to rein this in, he will have to take action to express federal power from the president's side in one of several ways. And I know what the options are. They've always been there for President Trump. He has not wanted to look or be overreaching, set of precedents that could then be used in a negative way at some future point in time. But President Trump is extremely sensitive concerning the matter of Tina Peters because she didn't do anything wrong. It was she was protecting federal election data that's actually in service to the U.S. House of Representatives. When the data from the clerks at the county level is accumulated, tabulated, recorded, stored, etc., the clerk in a federal election is actually, or in a presidential election, is actually working as an officer of the U.S. House of Representatives. Her data is then conveyed by a elector to the U.S. House, and the counties joining together with their electors present at the U.S. House on January 6th of 2021, in this case, their data showing who won the election. And that is a function of the federal U.S. House of Representatives. As such, Tina Peters wasn't working merely for the county or the state. And the things they charged her with, their superseding law, federal in nature, things that she was protecting. The state, with the laws of supremacy, cannot charge someone in state court for obeying federal law. And she was obeying federal election law and protecting the vote information, the records, the way she did. And therefore, it cannot be allowed to stand. Trump won't allow it to stand. But there has been a delay. Something is coming that's extremely important, affects the whole country. It's the most important thing Trump will do in his entire time in public office. And before he acts on Tina's situation, will be done in that context. In the meantime, he has sent in the cavalry. There's federal investigations looking at how the prison is run. They have improved Tina's situation dramatically because they know that heads are going to roll, and some people might even be charged criminally for the way prisoners have been being treated in Colorado, including Tina Peters. So that's far from done. And then there's other investigations going to the governor, the attorney general, the secretary of state. And I can't say too much on that, but there is probably courtrooms in their near future, not just civilian. So let's see how that plays out.
There's a few questions I realize probably out of the American sphere of influence. I say that with inverted commas. Rainer Fulmach is still in German prison after exposing the truth surrounding what he found to be in the COVID farce. Do you know anything about what's happening with him? Is there a movement, or is there a chance he'll get out of jail anytime soon?
You know, like Assange with WikiLeaks, we have a number of people that are have put their life, their well-being on the line for the rest of us, to make statements that imprint their life energy on the marble of this earth in ways that it's indelible. It'll be here for generations and generations. And we should, take some moment of repose and consider those lives that have been put on the line, being in prison for justice sake, on a righteous cause. He has the power of his convictions. Tina Peters could have avoided jail completely if she just agreed to make one statement, acknowledging Dominion was okay and there was nothing wrong with the vote and blah, blah, blah. And she could have been out, never would have spent a day in jail, wouldn't have gone to trial, the whole schmear. She had the power of her conviction. One of the things that is going to come out, and it will come out decisively over the next couple of years, is how precisely and intricately the whole COVID pandemic was planned as part of this global takeover through the election systems with the machines, etc., with China at the helm in much of it, to steal control of planet Earth by tyrants. And I will add that it goes beyond China. Who actually pulls the strings on the Chinese government? It's the banks at the City of London, the city within the city. And by extension, all of their little organizations, World Economic Forum, the Davos crowd, Council of Foreign Relations, SES Senior Executive Service, CERCO in the Commonwealth. There's a number of related organizations all working together, not just dozens, but hundreds. And it was the intent to reorganize the whole world and take control of the whole world in this coup. And at the core, the center of that coup was this death jab. Remember, within COVID, had they got their way, you'd have been getting a new vaccine every month before it was all over. First, it would have been every quarter. Then it was every month. You'd be getting a jab over and over and over. If the first one didn't kill you, the 10th one for sure would.
Yeah.
And they were forecasting reduced populations across the world in the various military groups. It was the work of a number of people exposing this, including the shot stuff. The one that isn't yet fully exposed is the monetary one, which is coming. And the political machinations that were going to put this tyranny in place forever. You'd never be able to break it. You'd vote from your phone and think you got an honest vote. Even if you protested, you'd never get a starting place to overturn it. You'd be in their grip for 1,000 years. Your children would grow up in that environment as slaves, thinking they were free, but actually enslaved to a system they could never break, a caste system. So with all of that in mind, those people who had the power, the conviction within their souls of truth stand out like neon lights. And we will have to pay homage to them, because they stood up when many of us didn't have the right tools, mechanisms, understanding. But when you took pause and thought about what they were saying, they were able to articulate things in a way that made clear certain truths, and will over time now expose these madmen who sought through tyranny of votes to take control of all of us, and with the threat, the fear of a pandemic and their mechanisms in this war did kill millions, and they need to pay.
Becky from Truth Seekers has joined us, although she's not joining us with the camera on. Apparently, she's wearing the bikini. She doesn't want to scare us all. It's very hot in Victoria where she is at the moment.
Well, it could be a bad hair day, but we have the Trump Megador bikinis. If you wear, in fact, some of the girls. I was at the pool the other day, someplace, and they had three of the girls had their Trump Megador bikinis on. It was very fun.
I'm still waiting for you and Jen to send me one.
Oh yeah, well we'll get you one there. You get me off here. I'll have her send you one. They're
One,
pretty fun.
I don't know how much time you've got left with us. I know that it's pretty late where you are, and you've been talking all day your time. I've got a few more questions. One of the big ones that I'm being asked is, when are you coming to Australia?
Well, I had wanted to be there literally all of January, but things have been evolving. And in fact, I was supposed to be on the other side of the planet this week. And so I'm in Italy right now. And even here, new stuff has happened in the last few hours that I may have to go other places. I was going to be in South America. I'm probably going to have to be in Africa. And so it's a little unpredictable, but of course the reason I want to be in Australia right now is because these are some of the best months of the year. And especially for car stuff. Oh my gosh, February, March, into April.
I think Samaritan has just started in Canberra this weekend, so there'll be some of the biggest alcohol-powered cars in the world there this week, doing all sorts of madness.
Well, I enjoy my cars. I have quite a few, and I have some nicer. Some of them are, a number of them are unrestored. But I have them because at some point in time I have time. I would go in and restore them, but they're very rare originals and like that. I have one that I just acquired, and it's a one of. It was the only one ever built, convertible within a very particular marquee of cars, and it was a factory built convertible, very, very, very rare, and to get a factory to build just one car of one particular type, even though you have an assembly line and all the other stuff. This was a post-war thing, and I'm very excited about it. And but now getting a chance to actually work on it and play with it, that's a ways out. So
you'll have to bring pictures
we'll
when
get
you
the world
come.
under control. But I was hoping to come down to Australia and bring something home with me.
Yeah. Well, we
I
still
think
want you
you were
to come
going
down.
to adopt me, weren't you, Juan? You were going to take me and my family back.
There you go. Yeah, we'll get a motor home and throw you all in the back and smuggle you in.
Praise the Lord.
I've got the motor home. Do you reckon you can put that in a container and send that over there too? I could help with that.
Well, years ago, a bunch of us put our Mustangs into containers, shipped them down to Australia, and drove around to Australia. So that was very fun and unique. And I don't know if any of the guys are still around that did that back then, but that was a very fun thing. And
somebody's popped up in the chat and said, when you come back, you'll be able to climb Mount Warning again. That indicates you've done it once before already.
Yeah. Australia is one of my favorite places, and as much as anything, it is the people. We are kindred spirits. There's a certain maverick independence. Americans did their own walkabout when they settled the West. Australians did something similar, and we have our indigenous populations that may not have gotten the respect they needed to back at some earlier time, but more and more every day, we see the genius of some of what's there, and kind of embrace each other as brothers. That there's a need to fix a lot of these problems across the world, by working together. Whatever happened in the prior times, all right, well, at this point, we got to work together. So, yeah.
Beck, have you got any questions? Oh.
No, I was just waiting for Juanito to come down to Australia. I had some big plans for us to go on some car journeys, but we can wait. We are patient.
I do have questions about your boots. One, people want to know if you get your boots custom made or you just buy them in a store when they strike you as a good pair of boots. And more particularly, what size boot do you take? I have a feeling you might be getting a gift.
Well, I will tell you that I've had custom boots made. There's a great custom boot maker in Houston that is very, very, very famous. And they go to quite a effort to, make the, the materials to work your boot around to custom fit your foot and all that. And so I've had 2 pairs made by them, and they're very nice. But I will tell you that there's a particular brand that I personally prefer, and that's Lucchese. There's different types of boots that people wear. I personally prefer a pointed toe, and always have. And the square toes, the rounded toes have very important functional stuff on the farm and like that. I prefer a pointed toe. And so a little bit more of a dress boot. And then I've probably got, a dozen pairs of boots that, as much as anything, because I travel so much, if I'm, back at the shop or something, I'll, pull out something different, just wear something different because I want to. But for the travel, I have a pair of black leather, very soft leather. They kind of form nicely and they're comfortable for me. Respond to the heat in the shoe real nice. And that I wear more often, it seems like, than any others. And I've had to resole them twice just in the last couple of years. And a good quality boot can take a resole and do just fine. And I've got, different, the gators and the ostrich and snake skins and like that. But just for practicality and durability. And then, they do some custom stuff out of Lucchese. So there's a particular store that gets their customs down in Williamsburg, Texas. And so when I'm there, that's where I have a number of friends that live and reside there. And I'll wander down the shop, see if there's anything there that looks unusual or nice that fits. And pretty consistently, shoe sizes vary all over the world. But 13s are pretty much seem to be right, 12 and a half sometimes. I bought a pair of boots in Italy last trip. I was here several months ago, and they didn't seem to hold. I have to wear them every day to get them to kind of settle down and let the shape kind of work. And when you don't wear them every day, almost, it's a project for a day or two to get them to want to settle down and fit nicely. So boots. Every one of them's a little different. That's the Lucchese ones seem to hit all the right numbers for me, and they're reasonable price-wise. You can spend incredible amounts of money on boots. I mean, just unbelievable. And you can get less expensive boots. The Lucchese's seem to be right in there and do a good job. And, I'm sure there's other boots that are great too. It just happens to be the ones that, for whatever reason, seem to work for me. I've never promoted them. They don't get any money. I don't get anything for saying that, but that's just the way it is. I think Lucchese is the one that I like the best.
Very cool.
There is one
how much-
question, Carl,
Sorry,
that a
yeah,
lot of
go, Beck.
people, a lot of people in the movement who have been listening to you for a number of years, they would like to know a little bit of history about who Juan O Savin is. Is there any way you might be able to inform? I know some of it you can't say, but
Yeah, I mean, the short version is earlier in my life, I ended up being in some unusual situations, and one thing led to another. Eventually, in the latter part of the Reagan administration, second term, I was asked, because I'd been injured on something, and so wasn't able to maybe do some of the more aggressive things that I'd been doing. And so literally I was in a hospital bed recovering, and the guy the next bed over said, it's a little more involved than that. Somebody was visiting me, and I wasn't put in the room with this other person for just happenstance. It was on purpose. I didn't know it at the time. And then having seen the interactions like that, I was invited to do something else, participate in another project. And that ended up being to do the work to ultimately take down the Russian ruble. That was a latter stage in a much bigger project to take down the Soviet Union. Reagan began that project with bringing down oil prices globally so that Russia didn't have oil to sell into the world, and therefore couldn't get hard currency to do its wars and all of its mischief all over the world. And then there was all sorts of things challenged him to a technology race, weapons race, SDI, Strategic Defense Initiative, was about getting the Soviet Union to spend a bunch of money they didn't have while they were trying to run a war in Afghanistan, another one in Nicaragua, and all sorts of mischief support Cuba. They were just too spread out, not enough money coming in, and broke their back financially. And the final step in that process was the takedown of the ruble. And we were buying rubles, and they looked super smart because we were sending Western currency into Russia, into the Soviet Union. And then when we returned their own rubles to them, nothing was counterfeited. And we sifted those rubles back into the Soviet economy. Within a very short period of time, the value of the ruble went down by 40%. And that caused a collapse in the Russian economy, brought down the wall in Berlin, and collapsed the Russian government. And so I was in a very intricate place during those operations. And I did other stuff as a courtesy at different times. Arkansas with the Clintons and like that, trying to expose what was going on, the bond movement there, where the money laundering was happening out of the various agencies. I felt an obligation because money that was used to take down the Soviet Union was not returned, as was the promise. I felt some personal responsibility to get that done, and it was hijacked by people within the intelligence community, families, and even much of what's going on in the world right now is that money having been misappropriated, allocated, used to tweak the world's economies the way that it is right now. And that cannot be allowed to stand. And so within my lifetime, I believe that we will have addressed that, and we're on our way to doing that. It's one of the things that Trump has as his most important thing that he intends to do during his time in office: honest elections and honest money.
That's honest elections and honest money. God, wouldn't that be good if we could have those two together in our lifetimes? One, there was a movie brought out, I want to say back in the late 80s. I think it starred Jean-Claude Van Damme and the guy who fought Rocky in one of the movies, Ivan Drago, whatever his name was, Dolph Lundgren. It was called Super Soldiers. Now, back in those days, that was just a sci-fi futuristic movie, but we hear talk of super soldiers all the time. And Georgina wants to know, have you any knowledge of super soldier programs or super soldier time traveler programs?
Well, let me say this. Oftentimes, something that's very real, how you deflect investigation into it is that you take it to an absurdity. And then anybody trying to look at the reality, they're diverted into the absurdity so quickly that now you're just a idiot or a fool. That there has been some projects to create, for want of a better term, super soldiers, either by programming, MK Ultra, or augmentation, extreme training, even getting children at a very early age, and essentially breeding them for these purposes. All of that's been in play. That's part of what was really going on in the church committee hearings in the mid-'70s, when the activities at CIA and other intelligence agencies were exposed with drugs, psychological programs, etc. Those were actually far more advanced even then than what came out in the hearings, and have continued to grow and morph since, and are a threat. As soon as you add in time travel, the only time travel that's occurring is actually where we use computers to essentially anticipate the consequences of potential things that can occur or do occur. And we model out likely future outcomes.
Is this Looking Glass? Are you referring to Project Looking Glass?
It is a type of Looking Glass project. You have a lot of headers that variations go on, including the psychics, the people doing remote viewing and things like that.
Yeah.
And so there's a very real aspect to that. And just for people just to know, in the earliest days of rocketry, in that post-World War II period, you had one of the people that was huge in this, who was using occult practices, trying to channel entities that he believed were here from this earlier period, some pre-Adamic race, the ghosts, if you will, the spirit beings of entities, creatures, humanoids that had lived in this region, had died physically but were still present in some spiritual way, that could give information on how to construct, what chemicals to use, etc., to make advanced rockets and other types of science. In fact, Jet Propulsion Laboratory was created by one of these people, and it's far more real than most people want to give credit to. And there was, in fact, a much broader group pursuing the science from an occult standpoint. Even in Germany with the Nazis, you had several secret societies in Germany, all the way back to the turn of the century, that were examining, supposedly channeling dark forces, demon energy, the Vril Society and other things similar, that believed they were getting guidance from entities that were ancient concerning advanced technology. Even if you look at the movie Indiana Jones, the first one, they were going to remote areas of India to try and find ancient technology that they could use in the war. Now, that might sound extreme to a lot of people in the audience here. Let me just add that we know now that something the Nazis knew at the time, there was 2 locations in India where there were isotopes that could not exist through natural processes that are the product of nuclear detonations. And so those 2 cities in ancient Indian lore tie to their religion, where they were sending beams of light out and destroying cities. Oppenheimer quoted the Indian scriptures when he said, "I am made like God, a destroyer of worlds." And that is the quote that he famously said at Trinity site when they blew the first bomb as a test. And so the Nazis were looking for these sciences, information, which they believed existed previously and which they just had to relearn. The same thing as Hughes also believed. So we have ancient technology right here under our feet that we probably don't fully understand even now. And we are trying to relearn something that was known in some previous era.
I imagine that could be a fairly dangerous occupation, trying to figure out that ancient technology in some cases too. We get a lot of questions about chemtrails, Juan. You mentioned earlier in the chat something about chemtrails, but the question I have from Billy is, are they hiding things? Are the chemtrails designed to hide something from us? And I'm suggesting maybe Nibiru or Planet X.
No. In fact, creating a hazy area above the Earth and all that, we can see through that pretty well with layering techniques. In fact, when you talk about the guys with the telescopes looking at the moon and other planets, what they're doing is they're taking dozens at least, if not hundreds of pictures, and the clearest of them through an atmosphere that's going in and out of focus, layering them one on top of the other and getting extreme high definition. And I'm extremely familiar with all of that technology and have been for a very long time. And so we see a lot of things. The idea that we have other planets. A friend of mine wrote a book probably 25 years ago, and it was looking at the concept that, most of the stars that we see in our solar system or in the galaxy have a twin star or multiple stars. They're not just a planetary system rotating around a star. They are stars that are interlocked in binary orbits, at least one other star. You can have multiple suns where they're in some kind of a dance, coming closer to and going away from each other. But the binary is the most common. The belief is, and there's if you look at the Voyager spacecraft, one of the things that's been going on that's not talked about in the public, the trajectory of both Voyager spacecraft has been deviating from what we expected it to do. And there's a zone out past, Pluto, if you will, where the dust, excuse me, is very thin, but it's within the gravitational pull of the sun.
Oh, right.
As you get past that zone, other galactic winds begin to affect the vehicle's trajectories, and even a field effect. I apologize, I'm losing my voice.
Yeah.
And the reason that's important is because the question is, as you look at the extreme edge of the sun's influence on the particulate matter on this plane of planets, they're relatively flat. They're not orbiting in all different directions. You look out across, they're on a plane like a dish. And as Voyager, the two Voyager spacecraft are reaching the edge of that area of influence, they're getting into gravitational regions, or more precisely, field effects that are causing their orbits to, or their direction of travel to deviate slightly. Tells us there's other influences on them and on the very minuscule amount of material that's out, matter that's out in the areas where they're at. Flow, if you will. What has some of the best science I saw on this, and it was really almost 20 years ago now, and the spacecraft are much further out now than they were then, supported the idea that the way that these field effects were propagating was a clear sign that, in fact, our sun is tied gravitationally and electrically to another sun that may be dark, brown star, if you will, that's very hard to see for whatever reason, but is out there. And we are like at the opposite. If you think of a baton and it's spinning, our sun is at one end of the baton, the other end is this dark star. And so our solar system with the planets is doing an odd gyration, rotating in some type of relationship with this other sun, this brown dwarf, that it's spinning like a baton. If you're looking over our solar system, our sun, we would be doing something different. It wouldn't just be rotating like a wheel only. It'd be a wheel tied with a baton type connection to another one that we can't quite see visibly for various reasons. Now, that if you wanted to say, is there a planet that somehow is orbiting between those suns, or is on some kind of an eccentric trip around the sun that goes way out, it's dark, it doesn't reflect much light at all, you got nowhere to look to see it, and it comes back in by Earth on some kind of repeating schedule. That's kind of the Nibiru thing. The other side of it is it actually that I use the idea of a baton, but it's not totally that. It's some kind of an eccentric, or not circular would be eccentric orbit that's very extreme. And it comes back past the Earth, past our sun on a periodic basis. and that it's not just another planet. It's actually a small sun. As it gets closer, as the field effects between our sun and that planet get closer, it can flip it on, like a light switch.
Yeah,
so
I understand. One, we might take the opportunity to let you go and gather your breath. It is pretty late in your part of the world, and I'm sure there would be a medicinal glass of Italian red wine there somewhere that would help your throat tremendously, should the opportunity present itself. And unless Becca's got something further she wants to add, I do have a few other questions, but I can hear your being a bloke who's used his throat until it's been dry on numerous occasions. I know what that's like, so I don't want you to struggle through it. And we can let you head off and go and have a bit of a sleep or catch your next flight, whichever way that works.
Of course, and I will look forward to getting to Australia. I want to spend time with you folks down there and enjoy it. Bring my bride down there and let her see what it's like, and enjoy all your hot rods with you.
We will make sure there is a show for you when you get here. That'll be absolutely on the cards. Thank you again for spending
Thank
some
you
time
so
with
much.
us.
Of course, folks.
Answering those questions. Really appreciate it, Juan. Thank you.
All right. Good night, folks.
Thank you.
Good
Bye,
night,
Juan.
mate. Juan O Savin, I think we've just about talked him out, Beck. He's been going well because he came on a little earlier than expected. And we had a bit of a chat for 10 minutes or so before he arrived, before we did the show. And he said he'd been talking and doing these sorts of chats all day. And I have no idea what time it is in Italy at the moment, but I thank him for spending an hour and a half with us. I think I got through just about all the questions.
Is he in Italy now, is he?
Yeah, that's what he said.
Oh my God.
So
I know
in Netherlands the other day.
The flying takes a lot out of his throat. He does mention that a lot. For some reason, I don't know. Probably we all know what it's like hopping on a plane with the altitude.
Indeed.
Yeah,
indeed. All right. Well, so sweaty in Victoria today, 31, you said, or 35 or something?
Yeah, well, it was very hot yesterday. It got to 38 yesterday. I think it's 31 today. But next Thursday, for those people that are in Victoria, it is a hot 43 degrees.
A hot 43 degrees.
Next Thursday, not this Thursday, next Thursday. So,
oh my!
Find someone with a pool. That's all I can say.
Absolutely. All right, love. You go and have yourself a bloody good day. I know you've got to get ready for work. So, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you, and God bless. Ciao, ciao.
Talk to you soon. The lovely Becky O from Truth Seekers. And to you folks who got out of bed early, Gay, I suppose we've managed to keep you awake a little earlier or a little later. Oh, how's it working? Oklahoma time. At any rate, apparently there is a good boot maker in Oklahoma. What did he say? 12.5 to 13 for him. I'm about 9.5 to 10, just saying. There is great thank you too to so many Americans who've joined us in the various different chats. Thanks for popping in. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the show, folks. We do get one on pretty regularly. And we do talk about some other interesting things from time to time, and we may well talk about some of those things later again this evening. For the moment, though, I'm going to let you go off and get into your day, and I'm going to go and try and get off and go into mine. So enjoy yourself for the rest of it, folks. And remember, if you are out there on the roads, there are dickheads about. Avoid them at all costs.
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up. Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life. It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. That's why we're going back. Does anybody else want to stay? Let's rock!